Okay, so next topic is load testing with the JMeter. So here we are going to learn the load testing process and then JMeter features and JMeter testing components and build and run test plans. Load testing process. So this is something similar to what we have covered in the first Java performance concept presentation. So identify hardware and software environments and identify user stories, identify loads, identify matrix. So these are a little bit too specific to load testing, like you want to identify loads and you want to then identify matrix. And then you implement scenarios and then perform testing and analyze the result. Okay. So identify hardware and software environment is to obtain consistent results, so that you want to make sure all the environments stay the same for your performance data. Okay. There are two types of environments: reference environment and customer validation environment. Customer validation environment is used to ensure that promised performance criteria can be achieved using customer's environment. And reference environment is to compare performance tuning result build to build. So in development time, typically you are going to use reference environment for your performance measurement. And customer validation environment is what the customer wanted in terms of their performance requirement. For either environment, the identification process is the same. So you have to make sure you record hardware information, network information, OS information, and third-party software version and tuning information. Again, the idea is that you want to actually remain the same for the consistent the data. Okay. I mean, you actually provide some consistency in terms of environment so that you can have more accurate performance data. One simple way to ensure software consistency or hardware and software consistency is in fact using virtual OS. Okay, virtual OS is actually a very nice way to basically, I wanted this type of CPU, I have this, I wanted this amount of memory space, and it's pretty simple to set at virtual OS, especially cloud these days. Things are definitely getting easier in terms of providing hardware and software environment. User stories. Again, user stories is to break down into components that will aid the load test implementation. So basically, the identify and record transactions which make up each story, and identify and record time expectation constraints. So basically, these are the important information that you have to think about before you design your JMeter the script. Identify loads, and then you determine the number of users accessing each user story. That is represented by what is called a thread group in JMeter. Determine if the number of users will be constant or randomized. Okay, so if your application is being accessed in the random fashion, if you are running e-commerce on site, depending on time of the day, depending time of the year, it might in fact have a different number of users coming in. Determine if the users will ramp up or down in number over time. Okay, so what it means is that you might in fact have the small number of users accessing the site in the morning, and then as time goes on, a larger number of people coming in. So you want to simulate this kind of ramp up behavior from users. Determine test exit criteria, so time test or number of transactions. Then you identify matrix. So what performance criteria will be measured? Okay, so do you want to measure transaction per second, or do you want to measure latency, or both? Okay, so matrix can be derived measurements. It could be Poisson distribution or histogram data. And then you identify scenarios. Scenarios are the combination of identify user stories with the identified loads. Okay, so example could be user login run with a load of peak usage in the morning, tapering down to randomized load to the rest of the test. Okay, so this is an example scenario you want to simulate using your load tester, in this case JMeter. Implementation involves creating scripts for the load test tool to simulate each scenario. So that's what I just said. Okay, so then you do performance testing. So basically, you are going to run this load test script with identify hardware and software environment, and then you validate the results. So you might want to consider a situation where results from the first run may be influenced by the startup behavior of the system being tested. So you might want to capture data after maybe 5 minutes of the system startup or something like that. Record results and be sure that data in the results you have collected is sufficient to generate the matrix you defined. Yeah, you cannot actually run the load testing for less than a minute and try to use it as actually representation of your system. You have to actually give enough time to collect enough data to justify the data is in fact the matrix represent the real customer situation. Okay, analyze the results. Using data collected, produce the set of matrix defined, compare the set of matrix against the matrix from the previous run, and compare the set of matrix against the performance goals of the user story. So these are the things that you have to do it each time you perform the load testing. Okay, moving forward. So those are more or less a conceptual idea in terms of how you want to proceed in terms of load testing. Now let's actually move into understanding the JMeter features for load testing. So what is JMeter? It's a 100% pure Java desktop application designed for load testing. Okay, so you can actually run JMeter as part of your IDE, Eclipse like a NetBeans. Here we are going to use it as a standalone Java desktop application. It's originally designed for testing web applications, but since it has expanded to do other tests, so here we are going to mostly do web testing ourselves. Okay, in our hands-on lab. Features. So load and performance test. So these are the things it can test. It can test HTTP and HTTPS and FTP server performance, the arbitrary database query performance, SOAP, LDAP, JMS, point-to-point and topic, subscription and publish and subscription model, mail, POP3, and IMAP. So these are the subset of things you can measure the performance by doing a load testing. So in our case, we are going to mostly focus on HTTP, okay, in our exercises. Complete portability and 100% Java purity, meaning it can run on any platform that has Java. Features. Full multi-threading framework allows concurrent sampling by many threads and simultaneous sampling of different functions by separate thread groups. So basically, you can actually have a multiple thread sending request, okay, simulating the large number of users. Okay. And distributed testing capabilities. So you can in fact have one master and the multiple slave server architecture. If you want to test, if you want to actually generate the load that is supposed to be huge, a single machine might not be actually enough. Okay, in that case, you can have one master and multiple slave servers. They are all generating a lot of loads. Okay, and caching and offline analysis and replaying of test results. Extensibility, again, is based on plugin architecture, so you can add plugins. Sampler plugins allow unlimited testing capabilities. Timer plugins allow gathering various forms of load testing, and data analysis and visualization plugins. We are not going to actually, JMeter itself comes with a lot of built-in functionality that is sufficient for the things that we are going to do in our hands-on lab. So we are not going to actually use any extra plugin. Okay. But if you actually go to JMeter plugins website, there are in fact lots of plugins. Okay. Actually, by the way, JMeter script can be scriptable, so Bean Shell is fully supported. Let me actually search for JMeter plugins. Yeah, JMeter plugin site. Yeah, it has a lot. Standard set, graphs, thread group timers, listeners, and samplers, and extra set, collector response code per second. Yeah, so you can see, JMeter community has website called the JMeter's plugins.org website, where possible plugins are available. Okay, so JMeter testing components. So these are testing components. So it's important for you to understand the concept of each of these. And because these are the things that you are going to actually use when you create your JMeter script. Test plan, thread group, controllers, samplers, logic controllers, listeners. Yeah, so we're going to actually talk about each of this in a bit more detail in the following slide. Test plan. All JMeter testing requires a definition of a test plan. So you as a developer, well actually you as a tester, you're going to create a test plan. So test plan defines steps JMeter will take to complete the test, and it includes these things. So these are the things that you want to add to your test plan. Thread groups. So basically thread group represents how many users you want to include in your test, and what is a ramp up behavior and things like that. Logic controllers, sampling generating controllers, listeners, timers, assertions, and configuration elements. So let's talk about each of these in a bit more detail. Thread group. Thread group represent users. So if you have a thread group of 5 users, then that script will have a 5 thread, each thread representing a different user. There could be one or more thread groups in a test plan. And attributes of a test group, a thread group. So this is what I mentioned in the previous slide. A number of threads. So number of threads representing number of users, as I said. Ramp up time, how long it takes to start all the threads. And so maybe if you have hundreds threads, and you want to actually say, I want to have these 100 threads to be, completely up and running in 1 minute, 60 seconds. So in that 60-second period, it will start from 1 to 100 threads. Number of iterations, how many times you want to run it, and time scheduling. So we can actually take a look at time scheduling options in the hands-on lab. And controllers and samplers must be attached to a thread group. So we're going to actually take a look at controllers and samplers in the following slide. And timers can be attached to a thread group to delay the time between each request to avoid server overload. So again, this is try to simulate as closely as possible to real environment. So you can give some kind of time delay between requests. So let's talk about the samplers. A sampler defines what types of request will be sent to execute a test, such as HTTP request. So in our case, we are going to mostly focus on HTTP request to test because we are testing web application. But you can test a lot of other things, FTP, JDBC, or SOAP, or access log sampler, bean shell sampler, BSF, and TCP sampler. So since we are mostly testing web application, we're going to mostly focus on HTTP request. And then you're going to attach a listener to a sampler if you wish to save the response from the request. So this term listener is a little bit kind of something that needs to be understood. So listener is basically a listener of the response. And as we are going to talk about in the following slide, listener could be graphical representation, or it could be histogram and things like that. And assertion also can be added to validate the result immediately rather than just to save it. So when you receive a result, you can actually perform some kind of assertion to make sure that that is in fact valid or not. So you can see, when you run your test plan, you can see how many times it failed, based on the assertion. So we're going to actually do all these things in the end-on lab. Controllers. So controller coordinates the order in which multiple samplers send their request. So basically we have simple controller and logic controller. So logic controller, you can certainly have some kind of script that actually control the order how the samplers send their request. In our hands-on lab, we are going to mostly focus on single Very simple test plan, so we don't get involved with the controllers. Okay, listeners. So listeners, as I said before, is used for displaying a test result. So listeners is used for receiving result and then displaying the response, test result. It provides means to view, save, and read save test result. Okay, so you can represent the responses in graph or spline visualizer, another visualizer kind of tool, or assertion results. You can actually you can actually assert the response. View results tree, aggregate report, view results in table, aggregate graph. So we're going to actually try a few of these listeners in our hands on that. Timers. Timers is used to delay between each request that a thread makes. So again, this is to simulate or emulate the behavior of real-life users. In fact, they have a bunch of different timer schemes. Okay, so pretty comprehensive timer schemes. Assertion. As I said, you can use assertions to validate the results. So response assertion, so that's basically something we're going to actually try. So when the HTTP response is received, you want to make sure that response status code is like a 200, right? So that's, you can use assert to make sure that response status code is 200. Okay. Duration assertion, meaning the response is received within the duration. Okay, that you specify. Size assertion, so the response should be smaller or larger or in a specific size. Bean shell assertion, you can actually even add some kind of logic to perform an assertion. HTML assertion and XPath assertion, so basically HTML assertion, HTML. Yeah, so basically what element is supposed to be there, the response. You want to actually make sure when you receive a response, if you want to make sure a particular HTML element is there, then, you can use HTML assertion. XPath assertion, same thing. You can actually use XPath notation to make sure a response contains a set of elements that you want to make sure that are present. Okay, configuration elements is used to add or modify request made by the sampler. So basically, it's a bunch of configurations. So like we're going to use the HTTP cookie manager configuration. So cookie is going to actually provide some kind of skewed the testing results. So in some cases, you want to enable cookie. Sometimes you want to disable cookie to simulate the environment, user environment as closely as possible. Okay, so these are all configured. So configuration element. Okay. Pre-process elements is executed prior to sample request and is used to modify the settings of the sample request just before it runs. It's like a filter. You want, when you send the request, you want to change it. Okay. So for example, user parameters. You can add more user parameters to your HTTP request. Post-processor request is the opposite side. Execute some action after sampler made the request. Okay. Okay, so execution order. So JMeter executes tests in the following order. So configuration elements, preprocessors, timers, sampler, and post-processors, assertions, and listeners. Okay. Let's see. Build and run test plan. So I'm going to actually finish up the presentation up to exercise 1. Then we are going to have 30 minutes lunchtime. Build and run test plan. So these are very simple steps that you're going to create a simple test plan. Add and configure thread group, and add and configure sampler like a HTTP request, meaning what is the destination of your HTTP request. Okay. Add listener, meaning how you're going to represent the test result. So in this case, we want to see the result in table. And add assertions. If you want to perform some assertions, you can add assertions. So these are the things that we are going to do in our hands-on lab. Okay, so this is a very simple test plan. Okay, so that is exercise 1. So let's take a look at the exercise 1. Oh, I didn't unzip it. Okay, so first you are going to download a JMeter package. Okay, so if you go to this website, you can just download binaries. Okay, and then you can just unzip it. Okay, and then you can go to that directory, and then there are jmeter.bat file or jmeter.sh file. Okay, so depending on your platform, you can actually run it. So in my case, I have it Java tools JMeter. So Apache JMeter 2.1.1.1. Okay, so you see there is a JMeter sh and JMeter bat file. So I'm going to just say JMeter like this. So JMeter is up and running. By the way, if you're running JMeter behind a proxy, you can set the proxy host and port. Okay, so first you are going to add a thread group. So add thread. So let me just do those things. So test plan and the thread users and thread group. Okay, so you are going to be represented by thread group like this, and you can give name to your thread group. So you can say Sang Shin thread group or something like that. You can just use your name, Sang Shin's first thread group. Okay. And so we're going to just use the action to be taken after sampler error, continue. So, when there is an error, you can actually have an option of, either continue or start the next loop. Now, these are thread properties. So, number of threads. So, I have just one user. Ramp up period in seconds. So, in 1 second, I have single user, so it doesn't make that much difference. Okay. And this is loop count. Loop count. So, this is going to just, loop just once. Okay. All right, so now, in order to actually have this thread group to be represented here, you have to actually click enter, and then you have to refresh. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yes, So once you enter, then you see Sang Shin's first group here. Okay, all right. Okay. And then we are going to add HTTP request. So here we are going to add sampler. So this is the sampler concept that we talked about, right? Sampler. And the sampler has a lot of samplers. Here we are going to mostly focus on HTTP request. So add sampler HTTP request. Okay. And then, we are going to actually go to JMeter apache.org. Okay. So let me just go to add sampler HTTP request. Okay, and then we are going to specify the name. So I'm going to just say JMeter homepage. JMeter. So we are creating a single HTTP request, and then we have to specify the server name field. We have to set the server name field. We are going to either IP address or the actual host name. So here we are going to go to jmeterapache.org. Okay, and path. The URL that you want to go to is we're going to go to the root like this path. Okay, and that's it. And then we are going to add a listener. So listener is again to view the result. Okay, so here we are going to select the add listener, and we're going to display the result in tables. Click this thread group, add listener, and we want to see that in table. Okay, so that is what you get. Yeah, so we all set. Now we are going to actually run the application. Okay, so we're going to actually, we are going to either this one, this is the start, or you can run and start. Okay, so either one. So I'm gonna just use this guy. You should save your test plan. So yeah, I'm gonna save it first. Okay, so I'm gonna just save it in temp somewhere. Okay, so now, so this is the result. You know, we have a result. Okay, yeah, we don't have to save it. Yeah, so this is the result. Now you are going to clear the result. So you can say run, clear all, or clear. Since you have only one result, you know, it doesn't make that much difference. We're going to use the clear all. Okay, so the result is gone. Okay. Now we're going to modify the thread group. So this time we are going to have 3 users, and ramp up time is 1 second. And so meaning, you know, in 1 second we're going to have from 0 to 3 users, and we're going to actually group twice. Okay, so we're going to go to this one, thread group. So we're going to change it to a number of threads. I'm going to make it 4, and ramp up period is 2, and loop count I'm going to actually have it 3, something like this. Okay. And then we are going to again run it. Okay, so we're going to run it, and if you click this result, you can see we have 12 results. Okay, and the status is all success. Okay, so this is what we see. You can add the assertions, so you can say add assertions and response assertions. And then, you know, response code is 200. Okay, so if you do that, then your status is fine. Okay, now for the sake of this exercise, you can change the response code to 205. So meaning, you know, in order to be considered as a success, it has to be 205. So you're going to change it to 205, and then when you run it, then you can see these are considered as failures. Assertion failures. Okay, so you change back to 200 again, right? And you can add another listener. In this case, this time you're gonna see view result tree. So instead of seeing in a table, we're gonna see the tree. So when you run the code, you know, you're gonna actually see in the tree structure. Okay, so you can see listener is basically different way of representing the test result. Okay, so that is exercise 1. So the next, we are going to enhance the test plan with a couple of more options. The first one is adding default HTTP request properties, and the second is add cookie support. So that's exercise 2. So we are going to enhance the test plan that we have created in exercise 1. The first one is we are going to create the default HTTP request properties. Okay? The reason that we are going to use HTTP request default properties is because in our exercise 1, we had to set, if you actually go back to so we have to actually create HTTP requests, and then we have to set things up, right? Suppose if you have to send 100 HTTP requests, you certainly do not want to do these things, especially the server is, you know, if the server is the same, then you do not want to have 100 or 1,000 HTTP requests created individually with the web server server name information. So by having HTTP default, by using HTTP request properties, default HTTP request properties, all HTTP requests will inherit the same data. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to add config elements. So, you know, config element, you have a lot of configuration you can do. But we're going to just use HTTP request default. Okay, so here, this is the you know, because HTTP server, I mean the destination server is the same, jmeter.apache.org. We are going to actually set this guy as a default. Next time you create a HTTP request, it will always use this default. Okay, so we set the default. And the second one is the cookie support. So nearly all web testing should use a cookie support unless your application specifically doesn't use cookies. To add cookie support, simply add HTTP cookie manager to each test groups in your test plan. This will ensure that each thread will get its own cookie but shared across all HTTP request objects. So basically, your web application typically use the cookies, right? So we want to simulate the cookie support, the same thing here. So here, we are going to use add HTTP cookie manager here. Okay. And then observe that HTTP cookie manager node. So you can see it is added right here. Okay. All right. So now we have set the HTTP default properties, and then we have set the cookie support. Now we are going to create the new HTTP request. Okay. All right. So we are going to actually create add sampler HTTP request, same deal, same thing that we have done before, right? Okay. Now this time we don't have to set the server name because that's coming from the default. Okay. So here we are going to create a two HTTP requests. One is the we are accessing changes page, so we go to /changes.html, and then we create another HTTP request. This one is we are going to issues page. Okay. And this one /issues.html. Again, you don't have to set server name because it's coming from the default. It's coming from HTTP request defaults right here. Okay. To the for, we are going to add new listener. This time we are going to use a graphics. So here we are going to say add listener graph result. Okay. And then you are going to run the test. So this time we are going to run the test with the 10 threads, 10 users, and loop count, we want to loop 50 times. Okay, so when you run it, you're going to see things are being displayed in graphed manner. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to try exercise 2. Okay, so let's move forward, the last subtopic of JMeter. Okay, so recording and playback. So JMeter can act as a proxy server between your browser and web recording for your actions. The way you want to create your JMeter script is not creating one by one as we have done in the past previous 2 exercises. What you can do is you can actually access the website yourself from your browser, and you want that interaction between your browser and the server to be recorded as JMeter script. So that's basically what recording capability of JMeter allows you to do. Okay, and then you can run that script later on. Okay. So easy way to create a test plan. What a test plan recorder does is it records the request sent to the server, and the recorded request can be easily incorporated into your test plan. So later on, you can incorporate those recorded the requests into your test plan. You can just cut and paste if you want to, or you can just use as a standalone. All right, so that is exercise 3. So last exercise. So here we are going to create a brand new test plan. So we are gonna call it my second test group. So I'm going to actually do it. So we're going to create new what am I doing? Test plan. Thread group. Yeah, so even if you actually press enter, it doesn't show right away. So you have to click this guy to see it. Okay. So the second test group, and then you are going to click test node. Yeah, okay. And here we are going to set the defaults. So here add config element HTTP default. And the one that we want to add is, let me just make it smaller, is we are going to use time.com. Okay, so we are going to use the server is going to be time.com. And then we are going to set the JMeter test script recorder. So here, so in order to create a recorder, you have to use a workbench. Workbench, add, and non-test environment, and then HTTP test script recorder. Click this guy, okay? And then set the test script recorder port. And so here you want to, port number is going to be, we're going to actually use 9090. So the reason that we have to use a particular port number is because this is where this proxy server is going to listen in, okay, incoming HTTP request. So this is playing the role of man in the middle kind of things, okay. So we are going to say test conditions is controller. So we're going to use the second. And then URL patterns to include and to exclude. So we can actually exclude and include things. For zip file, we don't want to capture that. So, for zip file, we are going to use, copy this guy, and this one. Yeah, so exclude, add, and you add here. Yeah, like this. And then click start. So basically now we are ready to start the proxy server for recording. So start. Okay, so now the script recorder is started. Okay, so you should actually see the indication of the server. Yeah, so if it is started, then start button will be grayed out. Allowed access. And this one you say OK. So now it started, and you can see start is grayed out, and you can stop it. Okay, so you can tell it's up and running. Okay, so now so this is actually tricky part. Now when you send a request to your server, you have to actually send it to 9090 so that this proxy server can actually listen in. Okay, so in the case of the Chrome, let me just increase the, so in the case of Chrome, so I'm going to just create a brand new one. Click the setting, and then on the settings and the advanced, and then go to network. And settings, and on the network you should actually see, so go to advanced settings, and there should be network. Here you go. So network. Okay, so your network proxy settings are being managed by an extension. Yeah, so I think the latest version of Chrome, it doesn't let you change the proxy things like this. Okay, yeah, I think I should actually document this somewhere. Yeah, so it doesn't let you set directly like this. Instead, you have to actually use a plugin. Okay, so let me actually show you the plugin. Okay, I should actually document this guy. Go to the setting. So extensions. Okay, go to extensions, and what is the? Yeah, okay, here, proxy switch sharp. Yeah, I think that's the one. Proxy sharp. Okay, and now let's actually manage and switch between multiple proxies quickly. Okay, so now we can actually set this up. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to set to so proxy server is going to be localhost 9090. Okay, and save. Or so this is the way that you can actually use the Chrome proxy extension, or you know, for the sake of this exercise, you can actually use the Firefox. Okay, so let's see whether Firefox is actually letting us to set the proxy a bit more easily. Okay, so go to Tools, Options, and I think it's actually Advanced. Yeah, Advanced, Network, and Connection. Yeah, so Setting. All right, so this is a bit easier. So you know, you might as well just use the Firefox, and then you can actually select the manual proxy configuration, and again you set the local host and 9090. So the whole idea is that whenever we are sending something to the server, you know, we want to send it to 9090 so that JMeter recorder proxy server will capture that. Okay, so yeah, we set this up. By the way, you know, you have to actually make sure, since we are testing on our own machine, okay, you have to actually remove this guy. All right, because no proxy for localhost 127.0.0.1. We are going to actually, you know, run the pet clinic application, so we're actually sending request to localhost. Okay, so you have to actually remove this guy and click OK. And OK. All right, so we're going to actually use now let's actually run times. So from the Firefox, let's say http www or time.com. Yeah, it still should work okay, because you know, it goes to the request is sent to 9090, and then JMeter proxy server will capture the request, and then it will send the request to time, the destination. Then when time send back the response, it will capture the response, and then response will be sent back to the browser. Okay. All right. So things seems to be working as expected. Oops. Unable to find the proxy server. Okay, so that worked. All right. So now you can actually see in JMeter, you know, things are, you know, these are the captured request and response. Okay. So now you can actually, you know, right-click thread group and select Add Listener Aggregate Report, and observe that aggregate report is added. Okay, yeah, so aggregate report, and then we are going to configure thread group. Okay, and then we can run it. Okay. Now you can actually save this script. So you know, you can actually save this script so that you can actually run it later on. And also you can actually remove this guy. Some of these things probably you don't need it, right? So you can just remove this guy, something like that. Okay. And you can save it, and then you can run the test, and you can see it is actually being sent to the server. Okay. And then you know, aggregate report is going to be displayed. Okay, so I'll give you guys about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you guys can do this. Okay, all right.